The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of Haven's Rest as Emma Rodriguez checked the irrigation systems one last time. The golden grain swayed gently in the breeze, ready for harvest in just a few more days. She wiped sweat from her forehead and smiled at the sight. 3 years of hard work had finally paid off. The colony was thriving. Haven's Rest sat on the edge of known space, a small world with fewer than 10,000 people. Most were farmers like Emma, or miners who worked the rich mineral deposits in the northern mountains. The settlement had no military base, no orbital defense platforms, and no weapons bigger than hunting rifles. The colonists preferred it that way. They had come here to escape the noise and violence of the core worlds, to build something peaceful and simple. 2 star systems away, New Montana was just as quiet. The cattle ranchers there spent their days herding modified earth cows across endless grasslands. Their biggest worry was keeping the native wolf-like creatures away from the herds. The ranchers carried old-fashioned projectile weapons and rode horses bred from earth stock. To any outside observer, they looked like something from humanity's ancient past. Kepler's Garden was the smallest of the 3 colonies, home to only 3,000 people. They grew exotic fruits and vegetables in massive greenhouse domes, shipping their produce to the core worlds where such luxuries commanded high prices. The gardeners were peaceful folk who spent more time talking to their plants than to each other. Their world had no defenses except a small communications array and a landing pad for cargo ships. Commander Vextar of the Keth Mori Consortium studied the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. The 3 human settlements were perfect targets, weak, isolated, and rich with resources that would fetch good prices on the black market. The Kethamori had built their empire by preying on such worlds. They would swoop in with overwhelming force, crush any resistance, and strip the planet of anything valuable. Sometimes they took slaves if the species was useful. Most of the time they simply eliminated the population to avoid future problems. The mammals have spread themselves too thin, Vextar told his assembled war council. The conference room aboard his flagship was filled with the chittering and hissing sounds of excited Kethmori officers. Look at these pathetic settlements. No shields, no weapons, no armies. They have forgotten the first rule of survival in space. His intelligence officer, a scarred veteran named Krikstal, projected holographic displays of the 3 human worlds. Our scouts confirm minimal defenses, Commander. The humans appear to be completely focused on agriculture and mining. They show no signs of military preparation. Soft creatures, spat War Captain Zethmore, his clawed hands flexing with anticipation. They have grown weak living in their gardens. This will be easier than raiding the crystal miners of Vega Prime. Vextar nodded approvingly. The Kethmori had learned to identify easy prey over centuries of raiding. Species that focused on peaceful pursuits rarely had the stomach for real warfare. The humans seemed to fit this pattern perfectly. They had spread across dozens of worlds but showed no interest in building proper defenses. We strike all 3 worlds simultaneously, Vextar decided. No warnings, no negotiations. Complete destruction of their infrastructure, followed by systematic resource extraction. Any humans who survive the initial assault will be evaluated for slave potential. The War Council erupted in approving hisses and clicks. Easy victories were always popular among the Kethmori, especially when they promised rich rewards. The consortium had grown powerful by choosing their targets carefully, and these human settlements looked like the perfect prey. Back on Haven's Rest, Emma finished her morning rounds and headed home for lunch. The small house she shared with her husband David sat on a hill overlooking the main settlement. From their porch, she could see children playing in the schoolyard and farmers working in the distant fields. Everything looked peaceful and normal. David was fixing the fence around their vegetable garden when she arrived. He looked up and smiled, pushing a strand of gray hair out of his eyes. "How are the crops looking?" "Perfect," Emma replied, settling into a chair beside him. "We're going to have our best harvest yet. The soil here is better than anything we had back on Proxima." They had left Proxima Colony 5 years ago when the core world started feeling too crowded and noisy. Haven's Rest offered something precious that the older human settlements had lost: genuine peace and quiet. No traffic, no crime, no politicians making speeches, just honest work and clean air. "Sometimes I wonder if we're too isolated out here," David said, attaching a new post to the fence. "The nearest human world is 3 jumps away. If something happened, help would take weeks to arrive." Emma shrugged. "What could happen? The Galactic Council keeps the peace and we're not bothering anyone. Besides, who would want to attack farmers?" She had no way of knowing that 3 Kethmori battle fleets were already moving toward human space, their ships loaded with weapons and hungry for easy conquest. The consortium had made their decision based on careful observation and logical analysis. The human settlements appeared defenseless because they were defenseless, or so it seemed. The truth was more complex than either the peaceful colonists or the predatory Kethmori realized. Humanity had learned hard lessons during their expansion into space. They had encountered hostile species before, faced pirates and raiders, and worse. The survivors of those encounters had passed down certain knowledge to future generations. Hidden beneath Haven's Rest, in tunnels the farmers never spoke about, emergency communication systems waited in silent readiness. Similar installations existed on New Montana and Kepler's Garden, and on every other human settlement scattered across the galaxy. They looked like simple farming communities, but they were connected by invisible threads to something much larger and more dangerous. The colonists themselves were not entirely what they appeared to be either. Emma had been a lieutenant in the Colonial Defense Force before retiring to farming. David had served aboard a destroyer during the Vegan trade wars. Half the simple farmers on Haven's Rest had military backgrounds, though they rarely discussed their past service. They had come to the frontier seeking peace, but they had not forgotten how to fight. More importantly, they had not forgotten what they were fighting for. Every human settlement was built on the same foundation: the absolute conviction that peaceful people deserved protection from those who would prey upon them. The Kethmori war fleets continued their approach, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. Commander Vextar reviewed the attack plans one final time, making small adjustments to ensure maximum efficiency. His forces would hit the 3 worlds at dawn, local time, catching the humans while they slept. "Remember," he told his captains during the final briefing, "speed and overwhelming force. Give them no time to send distress signals or organize resistance. By the time the other human worlds learn what happened, we will be long gone with our prizes." The attack ships moved into position around the 3 human worlds as their inhabitants slept peacefully, unaware of the danger approaching through the darkness of space. In a few hours, the Kethmori would learn whether their assessment of human weakness was accurate. They would also learn why some sleeping creatures should never be disturbed. The first explosions lit up the dawn sky over Haven's Rest like deadly fireworks. Emma Rodriguez woke to the sound of her house shaking and David shouting her name. Through their bedroom window, she could see Kethmori attack ships swooping low over the settlement, their energy weapons carving burning scars across the landscape. "Get to the basement," David yelled, pulling on his clothes with practiced speed. "Now." Emma's peaceful farming life vanished in an instant as old military training took over. She grabbed the emergency kit from under their bed while David activated a hidden panel in their closet. Inside was something that definitely did not belong in a farmer's home: a military-grade communications array that had been waiting 5 years for this exact moment. All across Haven's Rest, similar scenes were playing out. Former soldiers and Marines who had retired to quiet lives suddenly remembered skills they had hoped never to use again. The Kethmori had expected to find helpless farmers. Instead, they encountered people who knew how to fight back even when outgunned. The attack was brutal but not unopposed. Small arms fire erupted from buildings throughout the settlement as the colonists mounted desperate resistance. They could not stop the alien raiders, but they could slow them down and make them pay for every meter of ground. Most importantly, they could make sure word got out. David's fingers flew over the communication controls as Kethmori ships strafed their neighborhood. The hidden transmitters beneath Haven's Rest, New Montana, and Kepler's Garden all activated simultaneously, sending compressed data packets through quantum channels that no alien scanner could detect. The messages were simple and identical. Under. Attack by Kethmori forces. Civilian casualties mounting. Request immediate assistance. They hit the children first. Those messages traveled faster than light to receivers scattered throughout human space, carried by quantum entanglement technology that most species did not even know existed. Within minutes, the news had reached every human world from Earth to the furthest colonies. On Luna Station, Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports when her aide burst into her office without knocking. Lieutenant Morrison's face was pale as he handed her a secure datapad. "Ma'am, we have 3 priority alpha distress signals from the Outer Rim colonies. Haven's Rest, New Montana, and Kepler's Garden are under attack." Chen's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She had been expecting this day for 20 years, hoping it would never come, but knowing that eventually, someone would be foolish enough to attack human civilians. "Confirmed attacks?" she asked, her voice suddenly cold as space. "Yes, ma'am. Kethmori Consortium forces. Heavy bombardment of civilian targets. Reports indicate they're targeting schools and hospitals first, trying to break resistance." Admiral Chen stood slowly, her mind already shifting into a mode of thinking she had not used since the Vegan trade wars. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of humanity's combined fury. "Send the activation code to all fleet commanders. Use the old channels. Tell them the dragons are waking up." Morrison hesitated. "Ma'am, that will activate the reserve protocols. Are you sure you want to?" "Lieutenant, alien raiders just attacked human children while they slept in their beds." "I am absolutely certain." Chen's eyes were hard as diamonds. "Send the code. All of it." The activation code that Morrison transmitted was something the Galactic Council did not know existed. For 50 years, humanity had publicly maintained only modest defensive fleets around their core worlds. They appeared to follow galactic treaties limiting military expansion, keeping their forces small and non-threatening. It was an elaborate lie. The truth was that humanity had learned from every conflict in their violent history. They knew that peace was only possible when everyone understood the consequences of breaking it. So they had built something hidden beneath their peaceful facade, a military machine designed not for conquest, but for absolute retaliation. Within hours of Chen's signal, decommissioned ships began powering up in hidden bases throughout human space. The old treaty cruiser Beijing that had supposedly been scrapped 5 years ago suddenly came online in a hollow asteroid near Tau Ceti. The destroyer New York emerged from a camouflaged dock on the dark side of Proxima's moon. Hundreds of ships that officially did not exist began moving toward predetermined rally points. But the ships were only part of humanity's hidden strength. The real weapons were the people. Captain Maria Santos had been teaching agricultural engineering on New Geneva when the activation signal reached her. She kissed her wife goodbye, told her students that class was canceled indefinitely, and reported to a military facility that her neighbors believed was a weather monitoring station. 12 hours later, she was aboard the heavy cruiser Retribution, leading a battle group toward Kethmori space. Around her, the ship hummed with barely contained fury as her crew prepared for war. Commander James Park left his job as a mining supervisor on Vega Prime and found himself commanding a stealth destroyer loaded with weapons that violated 3 different galactic treaties. Dr. Lisa Chang abandoned her research laboratory and took control of a dreadnought that could crack a planet in half. They were not alone. Across human space, ordinary citizens revealed themselves to be sleeping warriors. The farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who made up humanity's peaceful colonies had another identity. They were the galaxy's most experienced soldiers, waiting for the day someone would be stupid enough to threaten their families. The Kethmori had made their assault on the assumption that humans were soft, peaceful creatures who had forgotten how to fight. They could not have been more wrong. Humanity had not forgotten how to wage war. They had simply chosen to do something much more dangerous. They had learned how to hide their true nature until the moment it was needed. As Admiral Chen coordinated the mobilization from Luna Station, she thought about the last time humanity had gone to war. The Vegan trade wars had lasted 3 years and ended with entire star systems depopulated. The galactic community had begged humanity to never again unleash such destruction, and humanity had agreed. They had kept that promise for 2 decades, becoming model citizens of the galactic community. They traded fairly, shared their technology, and resolved disputes through negotiation. The other species had begun to believe that humans were naturally peaceful. Now the galaxy would remember why their ancestors had called themselves predators. The quantum communication networks that connected human space lit up with military traffic as commanders coordinated their response. The plan they activated had been prepared years ago, refined through countless simulations and exercises. Every human world knew its role. Every ship captain knew their target. The Kethmori consortium was about to discover that they had not attacked 3 isolated farming colonies. They had kicked a dragon that had been pretending to sleep, and now they would face the consequences of their action. Back on Haven's Rest, Emma and David huddled in their basement as explosions rocked the world above them. But they were no longer afraid. The hidden communicator beside them confirmed that their message had been received and understood. Help was coming. Not the token force that most species would send to aid distant colonies, but the full fury of humanity's protective instincts made manifest in ships and weapons and the trained killers who had been masquerading as peaceful farmers. The Kethmori had wanted to prey on the weak and defenseless. Instead, they had just declared war on 8 billion years of evolution's finest predators. The dragons were awake, and they remembered how to breathe fire. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction of Haven's Rest with satisfaction. The human settlement burned beneath a rain of plasma fire, its pathetic defenses crushed within the first hour of the assault. His forces had encountered some unexpected resistance from the colonists, but nothing that could threaten properly equipped Kethmori warriors. Resistance has collapsed on all 3 worlds, reported Krixtal from his sensor station. Our ground. Forces are securing the mining facilities on Haven's Rest. New Montana's livestock will provide excellent protein for our crews, and the agricultural domes on Kepler's Garden are intact, Vextar hissed in pleasure. The raids had gone exactly according to plan. The humans had proven slightly more troublesome than expected, with some of the farmers showing surprising combat skills, but the outcome had never been in doubt. Superior. Firepower always won against desperation. Begin loading the cargo ships, he ordered. I want us clear of this system within 6 hours. The other human worlds will eventually notice these colonies have gone silent, and I prefer not to deal with their diplomatic protests. What Vextar did not know was that his 3-hour attack had triggered the largest military mobilization in human history. While he was congratulating himself on an easy victory, humanity's hidden war machine was moving into position around his forces like the jaws of a trap. The first sign that something was wrong came from the sensor operator on Vextar's outermost patrol ship. Chief Scanner Yethik had been monitoring space around Haven's Rest for any sign of approaching vessels when his instruments detected something impossible. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, he reported to his ship's captain. Distance. Wait, that cannot be correct. Report properly, Scanner, Captain Hexeral snapped. The Kethmori valued precision in their communications, especially during combat operations. Sir, I am detecting what appears to be a large spacecraft at the edge of sensor range. The strange thing is, it was not there 30 seconds ago when I completed my last sweep. Captain Hexeral moved to examine the sensor display himself. The contact was real, showing the distinctive energy signature of a military vessel. But how had it appeared so suddenly? Stealth technology, he realized with growing alarm. Signal the flagship immediately. We have... His words were cut off as space around the patrol ship suddenly filled with human vessels. They materialized out of nothingness like demons summoned from the void, their hulls black as night and bristling with weapons. The patrol ship's scanner screamed warnings as targeting systems locked onto them from multiple directions. The lead human ship opened a communication channel. The voice that emerged was female, calm, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. Kethmori vessel, this is Captain Maria Santos of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have 10 seconds to surrender before we open fire. Captain Hexeral's Hand moved toward his weapons controls, but he never reached them. The human ships fired simultaneously, their energy beams converging on the patrol vessel with mathematical precision. The Kethmori ship simply vanished in a ball of plasma, reduced to scattered atoms in less than a second. "All human ships, this is Santos." The captain's voice continued on an open frequency that every Kethmori vessel could hear. "The dragons are awake. Begin the hunt." Commander Vextar received the patrol ship's final transmission just as his sensors detected the approaching human fleet. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about human military capabilities. Ships were appearing throughout the system, not just a few rescue vessels, but an entire battle fleet that seemed to have materialized from empty space. "Where did they come from?" he demanded, his reptilian features twisted with confusion and growing fear. "Our intelligence indicated no human military presence within 3 star systems of here." Krikstal worked frantically at his console, trying to make sense of the sensor readings. "Commander, I am detecting at least 40 human vessels, possibly more. They are using some kind of advanced stealth technology. My scanners cannot get accurate counts or classifications." The truth was even worse than Krikstal realized. The human fleet surrounding the Kethmori forces numbered over 100 ships, ranging from fast attack corvettes to massive dreadnoughts that could crack moons in half. They had been moving into position for hours, using quantum stealth systems that made them invisible to conventional sensors. Humanity had learned from the mistakes of other species. They did not build obvious military bases or patrol their borders with visible fleets. Instead, they relied on hidden assets that could appear anywhere in human space within hours. The Kethmori had thought they were attacking isolated farming worlds. In reality, they had walked into the center of a carefully prepared kill zone. "Signal all ships," Vextar ordered, trying to keep panic from his voice. "Combat formation Delta 7, prepare to break out toward the hyperspace limit." But the humans had anticipated this response. As the Kethmori ships began to move, they discovered that every escape route was blocked by silent human vessels that seemed to know exactly where they would try to run. Captain Santos watched the alien fleet's movements from the bridge of her cruiser, Retribution. Around her, the ship's crew worked with the calm efficiency of veteran warriors. They had trained for this moment for years, running simulations of exactly this scenario. "Kethmori vessels are attempting to break out along Vector 7, reported her tactical officer. "Destroyer Group Beta is moving to intercept." "Let them through," Santos ordered quietly. "I want the survivors to carry word back to their leaders about what happens when you attack human children." The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. It was an execution. The Kethmori ships found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire from weapons they had never seen before. Human projectiles moved faster than their point defense systems could track. Energy beams punched through their shields as if they were made of paper. Worse than the weapons was the way the humans fought. They moved their ships with a coordination that seemed impossible, anticipating Kethmori maneuvers before they were made. It was as if the human captains could read their enemies' minds, responding to tactics the moment they were conceived. The truth was that humanity had studied the Kethmori for decades, analyzing their combat doctrine and developing specific countermeasures. Every ship movement, every weapon deployment, every tactical decision the consortium made had been predicted and prepared for. Commander Vextar's flagship shook under the impact of human fire as his fleet disintegrated around him. Half his ships were already destroyed, and the rest were being systematically hunted down by human vessels that moved like pack predators. "All ships, full retreat," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "Abandon the operation. Return to consortium. Space immediately." A new voice answered him, speaking in heavily accented but understandable Kethmori. The human had obviously learned their language specifically for this moment. "There will be no retreat, Commander. You came here to hurt innocent people. Now you face the consequences." It was Admiral Chen, speaking from her flagship, Prometheus, rising as it emerged from quantum stealth directly in front of Vextar's vessel. The massive human dreadnought bristled with weapons that could level cities, and every one of them was aimed at the consortium commander. "You made a simple mistake," Chen continued, her voice carrying across every communication channel in the system. You thought humans were prey. You were wrong. We are predators who learned to pretend otherwise, and now you have given us reason to stop pretending. The final phase of the battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, only 3 Kethmori ships remained intact out of the original fleet of 70. These survivors were allowed to escape, but not out of mercy. They carried with them recordings of the battle, proof of what had happened when the consortium made the mistake of attacking human civilians. As the crippled alien vessels limped away toward their home space, Admiral Chen surveyed the battlefield. Debris from destroyed Kethmori ships drifted among the human fleet like scattered leaves after a storm. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Prepare for Phase 2. We are going to pay the Kethmori consortium a visit they will never forget." The dragons had awakened, and they were no longer content to simply defend their territory. The hunt was about to begin. The emergency session of the Kethmori High Council convened on their capital world of Nexus Prime, just 18 hours after the disaster at Haven's Rest. The 3 surviving ships had brought recordings that no one wanted to believe. The humans, those soft agricultural species they had dismissed as easy prey, had utterly destroyed an entire consortium battle fleet. Supreme War Leader Thexmore studied the tactical recordings with growing horror. The human ships moved with impossible coordination, their weapons fired with devastating accuracy, and their tactics showed a level of strategic thinking that the consortium's best military minds could not match. "This must be some kind of mistake," insisted Council General Voxtall. "Humans do not possess this level of military capability. Our intelligence reports show only minimal defensive forces around their core worlds." "Your intelligence was wrong," spat Commander Vextar from his medical bed. Half his body was wrapped in healing gel where debris had torn through his ship's hull during the retreat. They were hiding their true strength. Those farming worlds were bait, and we walked straight into their trap. The assembled council members chittered nervously among themselves. The Kethmori consortium had built their power on the principle that strength could be accurately measured by visible military assets. If the humans had somehow hidden such massive forces, what did that say about their true intentions? "One successful ambush does not make them a serious threat," War Leader Zekthar argued. "They caught us by surprise, nothing more. A properly planned assault with our full military strength will crush them easily." Supreme War Leader Thexmore was not so certain. He had spent decades studying the tactical recordings of various species, learning to recognize the signs of truly dangerous opponents. What he saw in the human battle footage reminded him uncomfortably of the consortium's own methods. Cold, calculated efficiency, combined with overwhelming force applied at precisely the right moment. "Perhaps we should consider offering reparations," suggested economic leader Pexral. "The raid was profitable enough that we could afford to compensate them for the damage and avoid further conflict." The suggestion was met with hisses of outrage from the military leaders. The Kethmori had never backed down from a fight, never shown weakness to their enemies. To offer reparations would be an admission that they had made a mistake. "We do not negotiate with prey species," Thexmore declared firmly. "The humans may have won one battle, but they cannot stand against the full might of the consortium. We will mobilize the Grand Fleet and crush them completely." What the Kethmori did not realize was that human intelligence operatives had been listening to every word of their emergency session. Hidden surveillance devices planted years ago by human diplomatic missions transmitted the Council's discussions directly to Admiral Chen's headquarters on Luna Station. "They're going to escalate," reported Intelligence Director Marcus Webb as he entered Chen's office. "The consortium is mobilizing their full military strength for a counterattack." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. She had expected this response. Species like the Kethmori only understood strength, and they would continue attacking until someone made them stop permanently. "How long until their Grand Fleet is assembled?" she asked. 3 weeks? Maybe a month. They're calling in forces from across their territory. It will be the largest military operation they have ever attempted. Chen studied the star charts spread across her desk. The Kethmori consortium controlled nearly 50 star systems, with a total population of over 12 billion. Their military, forces numbered in the thousands of ships, supported by fortress worlds and massive industrial complexes. In a conventional war, they would outnumber humanity's visible forces by 10 to 1. But this would not be a conventional war. Activate the special operations teams, Chen ordered. All of them. I want the consortium to understand what happens when you threaten human families. The order went out through quantum channels to human operatives scattered throughout the galaxy. Some were diplomats who had been building relationships with consortium enemies for decades. Others were merchants who had been mapping industrial targets while conducting seemingly innocent trade missions. A few were deep cover agents who had been living as consortium citizens for years, waiting for this exact moment. Ambassador John Harrison was hosting a dinner party on the neutral world of Sigma Station when he received his activation signal. The guests included high-ranking officials from several species that traded with both humans and the Kethmori Consortium. Harrison had spent 5 years cultivating these relationships, and now it was time to call in the favors. "My friends," he said as the evening's formal conversation concluded, "I need to discuss something important with you. The Kethmori Consortium has attacked human civilian populations. This is not a trade dispute or a border skirmish. They deliberately targeted children and families." The alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the room had heard rumors about the consortium raid, but few had realized the full scope of what had happened. "Humanity is not seeking conquest or expansion," Harrison continued. "We want only to protect our people and ensure that such attacks never happen again. But we need to know where our friends stand." Ambassador Zelnara of the Zentari Republic was the first to respond. Her aquatic species had been trading partners with humanity for decades, benefiting greatly from human agricultural technology and medical knowledge. "The Zentari Republic condemns these attacks on civilians," she stated. "Formally, we will cease all trade with the Kethmori Consortium immediately and provide whatever support humanity requires." One by one, the other ambassadors made similar declarations. The consortium suddenly found itself economically isolated as species. After species chose to side with humanity, rather than risk becoming targets themselves. But economic warfare was only the beginning. Even as the consortium's trade networks collapsed, human special forces were already moving against military targets deep in alien space. Commander Sarah Kim had spent 3 years posing as a freelance engineer on the consortium industrial world of Tectron 7. Her official job was maintaining mining equipment, but her real purpose was mapping the planet's military installations and identifying critical vulnerabilities. Now she crouched in the ventilation system of the planet's main ammunition depot, surrounded by enough explosives to level half the facility. Similar charges had been placed throughout the complex by other human operatives who had been waiting for this moment. "Phoenix team, this is Sparrow," she whispered into her communicator. "All charges in place. Ready to light the candle." "Confirmed. Sparrow, execute on my mark." The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The ammunition depot simply vanished in a pillar of fire that reached into the upper atmosphere, taking with it enough military supplies to outfit an entire battle fleet. Similar explosions erupted across the consortium's territory as human operatives struck at carefully selected targets. The attacks were not random acts of sabotage. They were surgical strikes designed to cripple the consortium's ability to wage war while sending an unmistakable message. Humanity could reach anywhere in their territory, at any time, and strike without warning. On the consortium capital world, Supreme War Leader Thexmore watched reports flood in from across their territory. Military bases were erupting in flames. Supply convoys were disappearing without trace. Government officials were being assassinated in their own homes. The humans were not fighting a conventional war. They were systematically dismantling the consortium's entire infrastructure. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his intelligence chief. "How are they reaching targets in the heart of our territory?" The answer was simple but terrifying. Humanity had been preparing for this war for decades. While the consortium had been focused on obvious threats, humans had been quietly inserting operatives throughout their society. Every trade mission, every diplomatic contact, every cultural exchange had been part of a vast intelligence network. that could be activated when needed. The Kethmori had thought they were attacking 3 isolated farming worlds. Instead, they had declared war on a species that had been planning for this exact scenario since their first contact with hostile aliens. The humans were not reacting to the consortium's aggression. They were implementing a carefully prepared plan to eliminate a threat to their people. As reports of burning military installations continued to arrive, Thexmore began to understand the terrible truth. The humans had not hidden their military strength out of deception. They had hidden it out of mercy. They had been giving other species the chance to coexist peacefully, hoping that war would never be necessary. The consortium had taken that mercy for weakness. Now they would face what humanity looked like when the pretense of peace was finally abandoned. The hunt had begun, and the dragons were no longer hiding their claws. 6 months after the attack on Haven's Rest, Supreme War Leader Thexmore stood in the ruins of what had once been the Kethmori High Command Center on Nexus Prime. The massive structure had been reduced to twisted metal and broken stone by human orbital bombardment, its proud spires now pointing accusingly at the smoke-filled sky. The grand fleet that was supposed to crush humanity had never been assembled. One by one, the consortium's military bases had fallen to human special forces, or been destroyed by mysterious explosions. Supply lines had been severed, communication networks had gone dark, and entire star systems had simply stopped responding to orders from the capital. "The humans are offering terms," reported his aide, a young Kethmori officer whose hands shook as he delivered the message. The fear in his voice was unmistakable. Everyone in the consortium had learned to be afraid of humans. Thexmore took the communication tablet with claws that trembled despite his efforts to remain calm. The message was brief and written in perfect Kethmori script. To the surviving leadership of the Kethmori Consortium, you attacked our children, you burned our homes, you believed we were weak because we chose peace. You were wrong. The war is over. These are our terms. What followed was not a negotiation, but a list of demands that would effectively end the consortium as a political entity. All military forces would be disbanded. The government would be dissolved. War criminals would be surrendered for trial. The consortium's territory would be placed under human administration until new peaceful governments could be established. Unconditional surrender, Thexmore whispered, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. They want us to cease existing, as a people. That was not entirely accurate. The humans were offering the Kethmori population a choice: exile to the Galactic Rim under the supervision of neutral observers, or integration into human-administered territories where they would live under strict but fair laws. What they would not tolerate was the continued existence of the consortium's military culture. Admiral Chen had made the human position clear during her final broadcast to the consortium leadership. You built your society on the principle that might makes right, that the strong should prey upon the weak. We are proving that philosophy correct. We are stronger than you, and we will no longer allow you to threaten innocent people. The proof of that strength surrounded Nexus Prime in the form of a human battle fleet that had materialized from quantum stealth just hours earlier. Massive dreadnoughts hung in orbit like sleeping giants, their weapons aimed at every major population center on the planet. The message was unmistakable. Resistance would mean extinction, but the humans had not come to commit genocide. Even in their fury, they retained the moral principles that separated them from the species they fought against. The civilian population of Nexus Prime had been given safe passage to evacuation ships. Only the military and political leadership remained to face judgment. Thexmore made his way through the rubble-strewn streets toward the designated surrender site. Around him, the once proud capital of the consortium lay in ruins. Not from indiscriminate bombing, but from precisely targeted strikes that had destroyed only military and government facilities while leaving hospitals, schools, and residential areas untouched. The humans had demonstrated something more terrifying than overwhelming firepower. They had shown perfect restraint. Every shot had been calculated, every target selected with surgical precision. They could have wiped out the entire Kethmori species, but they had chosen not to. That choice made their power even more frightening. The surrender ceremony took place in the consortium's former parliament building, or what was left of it. Human marines in powered armor stood guard as the remaining council members shuffled forward to sign the documents that would formally end their civilization's existence. Admiral Chen waited for them at a simple metal table, her expression as cold as interstellar space. Behind her stood a young human woman in civilian clothes, someone the Keth Mori did not recognize but who clearly held great significance for the human commander. "This is Emma Rodriguez," Chen announced as the surrender documents were presented. "She survived your attack on Haven's Rest. Her husband did not. She is here to witness the end of the organization that murdered her family." Emma stepped forward, her eyes meeting those of each consortium leader in turn. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the pain that was clearly visible in her expression. "You thought we were weak because we chose to farm instead of fight. You thought our children were easy targets because they played in gardens instead of training for war. You were wrong about everything." She gestured toward the human ships visible through the broken windows of the Parliament building. "Those ships are crewed by farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who put down their peaceful lives to hunt you across the galaxy. They did not do it for conquest or glory. They did it because you hurt innocent people, and that is something we cannot allow." Thexmore signed the surrender documents with a hand that shook from exhaustion and defeat. Around him, the other council members did the same, formally ending the Keth Mori Consortium's existence as an independent power. "What happens to us now?" asked Economic Leader Pexrel, the only council member who had originally suggested offering reparations to humanity. Admiral Chen consulted a datapad before responding. "You personally will be transported to a rehabilitation facility on Kepler Station, where you will spend the next 10 years learning how civilized beings interact with each other. If you successfully complete the program, you will be allowed to settle on a human-administered world under probationary status." She looked at the other council members with obvious distaste. "The rest of you will face trial for war crimes. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and the sentences will reflect the severity of your actions." As the former consortium leadership was led away by human security forces, Chen turned to Emma Rodriguez. The young widow had insisted on being present for the surrender, and her presence had been more effective than any speech about justice and consequences. "How are the reconstruction efforts going?" Chen asked quietly. "Better than expected. Haven's Rest will be rebuilt within the year, stronger than before. We are calling the new settlement Hope's Garden, in memory of those we lost." Emma's voice wavered slightly. David would have liked that name. The reconstruction of the attacked colonies had become a symbol of humanity's resilience. The new settlements were being built with defensive systems that could repel any future attack, but they would remain primarily agricultural communities. Humanity was not abandoning its peaceful nature, merely ensuring that peace would be protected by strength. 3 years later, a delegation from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth to present humanity with an official commendation for their handling of the consortium crisis. The council members were visibly nervous as they met with President Martinez in the rebuilt chambers of the United Nations. "The council wishes to thank humanity for removing a threat that had menaced the galaxy for centuries," announced Council Speaker Veltora. "However, we must also express concern about the thoroughness of your response." President Martinez smiled politely, but her eyes held the same hardness that had become characteristic of human leadership since the Consortium War. "We protected our people and eliminated a threat to galactic peace. That is what any responsible government would do." "Yes, but the speed and efficiency of your victory has raised questions about your true military capabilities. Some council members are concerned that humanity may pose a threat to other species." The president's smile became even more polite and correspondingly more dangerous. "Mr. Speaker, humanity has no interest in conquering or dominating other species. We want only to live in peace and raise our children safely. But if anyone threatens those children again, they will discover that our response to the consortium was merely a gentle warning." She gestured toward a window that showed the rebuilt spires of New Geneva rising toward the stars. "We learned long ago that peace is not a gift that can be taken for granted. It must be protected by those who understand both its value and its price." The council delegation departed with a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They had always known humans were dangerous, but they had believed that danger was tempered by mercy and restraint. The Consortium War had proven that those qualities made humanity more dangerous, not less. The galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. Trade continued, diplomacy flourished, and the various species coexisted in relative harmony. But everyone understood the rules now. Attack human civilians and face the dragons, threaten their children and discover why their ancestors had conquered an entire world, armed with nothing but teeth and claws, and the absolute determination to protect their families. In the rebuilt gardens of Haven's Rest, Emma Rodriguez tended flowers that bloomed in soil enriched by the ashes of those who had thought humanity was weak. She had remarried, started a new family, and found peace again. But she never forgot the lesson that had been written across the galaxy in the wreckage of Kethmori ships. Dragons never forget, and they never forgive those who harm the innocent. The children of humanity played safely in their gardens once more, watched over by protectors who had proven they would cross any